stories. They're not like these grand stories that build and build and build, and then there's like some weird part to it. It's just like, I guess, obedience and God's power is what we're going to talk about, but it is weird. All right, so we find ourselves in Ezekiel. Actually, we find ourselves in the 13th year in the 4th month on the 5th day. That's what Ezekiel starts off his book with. So, yeah, we're in the 13th year, the 4th month, 5th day. I don't know when that is. It's sometime a long time ago. And so Ezekiel is being called by the Lord, and the Lord is giving him a message to tell people. And so in verse 3, we pick it up. So God gives him this scroll and wants Ezekiel to tell people what it is. And so this is what happens. He said, then I looked, and I saw a hand stretched out to me, and in it was a scroll, which he unrolled before me. On both sides of it were written words of lament and mourning and woe. He then said to me, Son of man, eat what is before you, eat this scroll, then go on and speak to the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he gave it to me, and I ate the scroll. So it said it tasted like honey. It's like one of those, like when you walk in on kids or somebody that's not supposed to be doing something, and you're like, hey, you should, and they like put their stuff away real quick. It's almost like Ezekiel's like listening from the Lord, and he's obeying every single word, and God's like, eat this. And it's like, when did he think that was weird? When the scroll was in his mouth, did he hesitate? It doesn't say that he hesitated, but he just eats this scroll, this parchment, this paper, which back then, I don't know, it's bigger than what you would imagine a piece of paper, and it tasted like honey. So that's weird. Eating scrolls that taste like honey. Yeah. Just an all-around weird story. But we know what came from that, the craziness. We're going to jump to the New Testament again. We got to read from the New Testament last week. We've been in the Old Testament mostly, but we jumped to the New Testament and talked about Paul speaking on and on and on, and a kid falling out of a window. Poor kid. He's okay now. Well, he's probably dead now, but he was okay then. So Jesus keeps his cool a lot of the time, and there's one time where we see him get angry. But right before he goes in and throws these people out of the temple, we see him get hangry. And if you're not familiar with the term hangry, that's hungry and angry combined, hangry. So he's walking up there, and he sees a fig tree, and he goes over to it, and he's like, no figs. And so being, the triune God, he says, curse you. And so this is what he says. So we're in Mark 11. Where are we at? Okay, yeah, Mark 11:12. He says, the next day as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree in a leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. When he reached it, found nothing but leaves, because it was not the seasons for figs. So again, it's not even the tree's like not just like not bearing fruit. It's not the season for figs. So it's like going up to an apple tree and being mad because it doesn't have apples when it's May. they don't grow yet, man. And so so when he reached it, he found nothing but leaves, because it wasn't the season. Then he said to the tree, may no one ever eat fruit from you again. Like Jesus diss, right? And so he disses this tree, and the disciples heard him say it. So he goes in the temple, and on the way out, in the morning as they went along, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots. Peter remembered and said to Jesus, Rabbi, look, the fig tree you cursed was withered. And that's when he gives us the ye should have faith to move a mountain, you can do it speech, which was great. Thanks, Jesus. But I just think, like, that poor tree, like, just cursed trees. Crazy Bible stories. Hey, one other cool Jesus thing that we get to learn from is in John 2:9. So this is right when Jesus starts doing miracles. Let's talk about the wedding of Cana for a second. So a lot of people out there think that Jesus only drank freshly squeezed grape juice, or back then there was a difference. There was a difference. In the Bible, alcohol is mentioned in 20 different scenarios. And it breaks down into 3 categories, okay? And so there's squirrels going nuts behind me. Did you hear that? There they go again. crazy squirrels. So it's mentioned 27 different times in the Bible, and 3 times it's mentioned in these 3 categories, okay? And so all those 27 fall into these 3 categories. And really that's wine, like new wine, like they put into freshly, new wine skins. It hasn't fermented much yet, so that's like more fresh new wine. And then you have the wine that is fermented and is actually what we know to be, not exactly, but close to what we know to be wine to this day, or alcoholic drinks, the alcohol content in there. And then the third one is used as a blessing. So we see that in Isaiah when he's talking about the bridegroom feast. And when it's used in communion, that's considered a blessing. That's the category it falls under. So blessing, wine, and new wine. And so when we pick it up here in John, so he's at this wedding and he's with his buddies and his mom. And his mom comes to him and says, this is John 2:9. His mom comes to him and says, hey, Jesus, they're out of wine. It doesn't say that she said, hey, Jesus, they're out of wine. You need to do something. It just says, hey, Jesus, they're out of wine. And he says, why'd you come to me with this, woman? Why do you involve me? My time has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, do what he tells you. So it's almost like she's like asking Jesus maybe to do this, and he's like, no. And then she looks to his buddies, and they're like, do what he says. Because she knows, right? She knows. And so Jesus asks them to grab some containers, and the water turns to wine. They give it to the master of the banquet, and the master of the banquet tastes it, and he's like, I guess, what did he say? He said, I guess we can read it here. So they gave it to the master of the banquet, and the master tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, everyone bring out the choice wine first, then the cheaper wine after, because the guests had too much to drink. All right, and so basically in that time, they'd have these wedding feasts that would go on and on and on. And they would get the new wine first, people would start drinking it, and then when they wouldn't kind of understand the quality of the wine they were drinking, they're more drinking it just because it's what they were doing and they weren't thinking straight. The wine didn't have to be as good because they didn't have all their wits about them. And so, the water that he turned into wine was actually wine, because the Greek word there is oinos, which falls under the category of wine that you can actually, that has alcohol content that you can actually feel, right? And so that wasn't tarash, which would have been used there. The Greek word, it's not tarash, which would have been new wine. It's oinos, which is aged wine. So there you go, a little Bible wine story, history, alcohol, a little lesson there. So yeah, Jesus turns water into wine. The other crazy thing, all right, so if any of you have been to Paris and been to the Louvre, whatever it is, I don't speak French, but the big museum in Paris, that one has the Mona Lisa in it. So in that little room where the Mona Lisa is this little picture of Mona Lisa, which is like this big, very, very small. And that's on one side, and everybody's crowded around it. You can't get too close. You're like peeking through. You can't get too close. But then, like, I'm looking at these people trying to peer at the Mona Lisa, which is an amazing piece of art, okay? I'm not dogging on that. But you turn around, and there's this huge, like 30 yard, like 30 meter, because we're in France, 30 meter portrait of the wedding of Cana. That's like 14 feet tall. So over on one side, you have this wedding of Cana, and it's like, that would be 30 meters, 90 feet. So almost 100 feet, right? And it's huge and about 14 feet tall. And on the other side is this little Mona Lisa everybody's poking in. It's like, that's crazy. So anyways, random thoughts with Joe. Maybe not crazy as Bible stories with Joe, that last part, but just crazy thoughts with Joe. Hey, little advice, okay? This is something that I learned from my baseball coach in college. If you're having a bad day, that's your bad day. That's not other people's bad day, right? And so let's work hard, because there's a lot of bad days right now. Let's all face it. We're going through a lot, and we're all in this together. A little red-green quote there for you. We're all in this together. We're pulling for you. But if you're having a bad day, that's your bad day. That's not mine. That's not your friends. That's not your wife. That's not your husband. That's not your kids. Own that bad day. Give it to the Lord. Have some grace for yourself, and let's all try to get through this together. All right? So, ending true red grain fashion. Well, I won't say that, because that's only to men. But anyways, I think you guys are great. If you need anything, let us know. We're here for you. Talk to you later.